And anyone who knows me well knows very well in all of these Beatitudes and all of these petitions, I fall so short, it's unbelievable. But that examine prayer that St. Ignatius recommends, it gets us back on track. It keeps us oriented. It keeps us going toward the Beatitudes. It keeps us going toward the heart of Christ. It keeps us resonating and loving and trusting the heart of Christ that we're trying to kind of resonate with. And if that's the case, we're going to be okay. And even people like me who can just go zinging off the track during the day, zinging off in impatience, or zinging off in anger, zinging off in some other direction, people like me can get back on track again. And that's the objective of that prayer, and we'll come back to that in the next episode. But right now, I want to just get this focus of the examine prayer, because if we're going to know what the heart of Jesus is like, and if we're going to know the heart that Jesus is calling us to, a heart, as it were, speaking to the heart, a heart resonating with the heart, if we're going to get that heart that Jesus, which is like Jesus' own heart, if we're going to do that, we have to understand what Jesus is really about. We have to understand his definition of love. We have to understand his definition of conversion. And that's really contained in the Beatitudes. So what I'm just going to do is give you kind of a translation of the Beatitudes for a second, and then we'll be able to see what his definition of love is like, and we'll be able to see also what his definition of conversion for us is like, and then we'll be able to see what his heart is like, and then we'll know that we can trust him even in our journey toward the Beatitudes, and at every moment in our lives, and especially in our examine prayer. So here are the Beatitudes, read very simply from the Gospel text. You can hear 8 different Beatitudes in this, and let's just go through them and kind of divide them up for a moment. So Beatitude number 1, blessed are the poor in spirit, then blessed are the sorrowing, blessed are the meek, blessed are those hungering and thirsting for holiness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. And blessed are those persecuted for Christ. 8 Beatitudes here. Now, what we want to do then is split these up into 2 kinds. One I'm going to call promise Beatitudes. These are promises that Jesus is making for redemption of suffering, either in this world or in the next, or both. So that's Beatitude number 2 and Beatitude number 8. Those are promise Beatitudes. Blessed are the sorrowing, they shall be consoled. That's a promise. Consoled here, consoled in the next world. Then in the kingdom of heaven. Then we take this 8th beatitude, blessed are those persecuted for holiness' sake, the kingdom of God is theirs. Okay? You're going to get the kingdom, right? If you're persecuted now, you'll get consoled maybe here and certainly in the kingdom to come, 1,000,000,000 times told lovelier. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is remove those 2 beatitudes from consideration for just a second, those promised beatitudes, and I'm going to stick with the other 6 remaining beatitudes. And those 6 beatitudes are what I'm going to call virtue beatitudes. And those are the ones that we want to use in our exam and prayer. And we'll talk about them in this episode and in the next episode. But let's now, for a second, just list those again. Poor in spirit, meek, and then, of course, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, mercy, pure of heart, and peacemaking. Let's take those 6 in particular, and let's kind of craft them into a translation that really makes sense for us, and then, of course, try and integrate it into the exam and prayer, which is so important to getting our hearts into conformity with Christ's own heart. So let's just take a look at that for just a moment. What does it mean to be poor in spirit? What Jesus is really saying here is the humble-hearted. You will notice that in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus has this phrase where he's talking to his disciples, and he's saying, "Come to me, all you who are find life burdensome, and I will refresh you." And then he goes on to talk about himself. "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And then he tells his disciples that he is humble and gentle of heart. Humble and gentle of heart. Notice that the Greek words here have the exact same roots as the first and the third beatitudes. So what I want you to see then is that when you're dealing with these beatitudes, okay, that a good way of looking at poor in spirit is humble-hearted, and a good way of looking at meek is gentle-hearted. And we'll come back to meek in just 1 minute. Let's just take for a moment, though, blessed are the humble-hearted. Okay, the kingdom of God is theirs. What does the humble-hearted mean? I'm just going to get, this is a very important petition. It's right up front. And when you see something up front in a list like the Beatitudes, you know it is truly important and defines the rest of the list. Humble-hearted, being at the beginning of the list, then defines all of the other Beatitudes. And what does it mean, this very important first virtue? It really means 2 things. Number 1, it means putting the contributive before the comparative. This is my own way of looking at it for those of you who have heard my levels of happiness before. You know that, right, you can have maybe 2 fulcrums of looking at life every day when you get up. You can look at life in terms of who's achieving more, who's achieving less, who's got more power, who's got less power, who's got more control, who's got less control, who's winning, who's losing, who's got more status, who's got less status, who's smarter, who's less smart, who's got more admiration, who's got less admiration, who's more popular, who's less popular, with the neurotic tone in our voices increasing with every passing second. What is this all about? It's the comparative identity gone crazy. And what, of course, Jesus is trying to tell us is is this identity of getting ourselves over against the other does nothing but cause jealousy, fear of failure, suspicion of others, ego rage, ego blame, ego sensitivity, inferiority, superiority, and all the other things that make our life so darn miserable. Now, if you take a look at that for just a second, you know there's another identity fulcrum. It's grounded in Jesus' identity fulcrum of agape or love. And so let's just take a look at that for just 1 second. This agape or this love, it really means this: a contributive identity that I want with all my heart not to compare myself to others, not to be smarter than everybody else, not to have more status than everybody else, not to be a winner over against somebody else's losing, but rather I want to make an optimal positive difference with my life. I want my life to make an optimal positive difference to my family, optimal positive difference to my friends, an optimal positive difference to my community, an optimal positive difference to my church, an optimal positive difference to the kingdom of God, an optimal positive difference to the culture if I have that kind of influence to do it, etc. I want to make in every context of my life the most out of my life so that when I die, instead of saying, well, there was no difference between my life and that of a rock, I can say instead, my life actually had some significance in the whole order of salvation because Christ willed it so, and because I was able to keep myself focused on that identity which He called me to. Now that contributive identity, if it becomes the end, and the comparative identity is merely a means, it's just merely, we have to contend with the world around us. We need some modicum of achievement, some modicum of control and power, some modicum of self-esteem, some modicum of study, etc. If we can use all these things as means to the end of love, to the end of making an optimal contribution, at the end of the day, humility will begin to ensue. You see, humility is not self-deprecation. Humility is putting our gifts into the proper place. Our gifts, our intelligence, our status, our power, they're not ends in themselves. They are literally tools, mere means to be used for the kingdom of God, mere means to be used in the interests of love, of making an optimal contribution to the kingdom of God and to the people all around us. So humility, first and foremost, is getting the kingdom first, getting love first, and then using these other things as tools and means to getting to the kingdom. Seek first the kingdom, and all other things will be given to you besides. So humility, first and foremost, is that power, as it were, to keep our eyes fixed on the Lord, fixed on the kingdom, fixed on love, fixed on contribution, and to put the comparative identity in its proper place. Secondly, humility also concerns putting the value and dignity of the person before any comparisons, before any comparative identity fulcrum. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. But the key thing to remember is this idea of humble-heartedness is going to allow us to rejoice in the salvation of others, to rejoice in the success of others, to rejoice in others' contributions to the kingdom. It's going to enable us to rejoice with others rejoicing and to grieve with others grieving. It's going to enable us then to put things in a proper perspective so that our hearts will be liberated. And once that's the case, then our conversion begins. And once our conversion begins into the very heart of Christ, then the will of God can be done through our lives and our actions in such a great way.